Recently, I've been feeling restless and went to the hospital, where I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. The doctor kept trying to console and encourage me. Look at you. You're all dressed in luxury goods. You must have had a very happy life. Right? This condition can also be slowed down. Tell your husband and children not to worry too much. Call them all here first, and I'll give them some instructions on what to pay attention to. I opened the contact list on my phone and stared fixedly at the section marked relatives. My son, who had quarreled with me and cut off relations as soon as he went abroad. My rebellious daughter, who hated me because I had broken up her relationship. Or my husband, who didn't know where he was at the moment, accompanying his mistress. For a moment, I didn't even know who to call. I turned off my phone and said infuriately, "Forget it. Let's not tell them. Just this once. I'm going to forget all about them." After leaving the hospital, it's snowed in Nanchang, which was a rare occurrence. I'm from Bichang and have been married in Nanchang for 30 years. This is the first time I've seen snowflakes swirling all over the city right at the beginning of winter. As the saying goes, a timely snow promises a good harvest. It seems to be a good omen. I squinted my eyes and couldn't quite remember the way home clearly. In the end, I chose to take a taxi. I couldn't use the payment software after it was updated either. It took me a long time to figure it out, and the taxi driver scolded me for a long time. After going through many twists and turns, I finally got home. As usual, the huge house was cold and deserted, without a trace of the breath of someone living in it. I numbly tidied up the dining table and then casually stir-fried the leftovers from the previous night. I had dismissed all the servants a few days ago. I was the only one at home, and I didn't need so many people to serve me. While stir-frying the vegetables, I unconsciously spaced out and even forgot to turn off the stove, almost causing a fire. I quickly put out the fire. The stir-fried vegetables turned out to be black and unappetizing. I took a couple of bites casually and then went to bed. It was not until the early morning that Cedric came home. Hearing the sound of the door opening in a daze, I put on my coat and came out of the bedroom and went downstairs. Cedric was sitting on the sofa in the living room on the first floor, smoking a cigarette. He had dyed his hair today, dyeing some of his silver hair black. In addition, Cedric's face was still well maintained, with not many wrinkles, and his figure was also perfectly maintained. At the moment, he looked no different from when he was young at first glance. I thought to myself, with such good maintenance, no wonder there are always women around him. He was taken aback when he saw me and extinguished the cigarette. "You haven't gone to bed yet?" I nodded and said half-jokingly, "I'm old. I've been suffering from neurasthenia recently. In fact, after reaching a certain age, Cedric had always treated me with respect. So a look of annoyance flashed across his face for a moment. "Sorry. If I'm late next time, I won't come back." There was a scent of women's perfume on him, which smelled somewhat familiar. Vaguely, I remembered it was the scent of his mistress. There was a moment of silence. After hesitating for a while, he still didn't plan to hide it from me and said, "Our son came back today. We held a welcome banquet for him. Our son might still not want to see you, because of what happened back then. So I took him on with me." I nodded again. "Oh." I affirmed myself in my heart. Sure enough, it was the scent of his mistress. It seems that my memory is still not bad now. Not as serious as the doctor said at all. "Have you eaten today?" Feeling somewhat guilty, he couldn't help but ask. "If you haven't eaten, I'll cook you some supper." I interrupted his hypocrisy. "Cedric, I have something to tell you." I put on my glasses but couldn't remember which compartment I had put them in for a moment. I had to keep rummaging through things, and it took a long time to find a document. I handed it to Cedric. He flipped through it, and after reading it, his face turned extremely pale. I sighed. "Cedric, my mother passed away at the beginning of this year. Didn't she? I thought that our marriage can also be nullified. In fact, we both lived quite a miserable life together. We don't like each other but still had to get married. Now that we've reached this age, let's set each other free. This is what we've both dreamed of most in our lives. Isn't it?" After hearing what I said, Cedric remained silent and lit another cigarette. in the swirling smoke. I couldn't see his expression clearly. I smiled awkwardly. And our son and daughter. Neither of them recognizes me as their mother. Look. I didn't even know our son came back today. I wasn't even invited to the welcome banquet. You and your mistress were the ones who went. I've really lived a failed life. Anyway. We've raised them both so big. And they won't need me for their future. I think there's nothing for me to be reluctant about. So sign this divorce agreement. And we'll go and get the divorce certificate after the 1-month cooling off period. Cedric's voice was a bit hoarse. Anyway. We've gotten through all these years. Let's just go through with the whole act and hold on until the end. Okay? I took a cigarette from his hand and said softly, I'm too tired. Cedric. You and Yvonne have been together behind my back for so many years. She's probably the mistress who has been with you the longest. Right? Actually, I can't stand being betrayed. When I was young, I had a bad temper. I quarreled with you a lot because you kept having mistresses. And we even talked about divorce many times. But every time, my mother stopped me. She said that my family went bankrupt. And it was your family who provided the financing. So I had to be nice to you unconditionally. But no one ever cared about my feelings. Over the years, the money my family owed your family has almost been paid off. Now that my mother is gone, there's no need for us to continue this act. There's no one watching anymore. I took a deep breath of the cigarette, smiled, and continued, let's get a divorce. Cedric. You also want to give Yvonne a proper status, don't you? Last time, I even heard our daughter call her mom. After saying these words, I felt stuffy again. And my mind went blank. I only remembered that Cedric kept smoking one cigarette after another. In the end, he said okay, in a hoarse voice. Then he picked up a pen and signed his name on it. After signing, he picked up his coat and planned to go out. I called out to him. When you're free in a couple of days, go to the Civil Affairs Bureau with me. Let's apply for a divorce first. Seeing my determination, a trace of annoyance also flashed across his face. Cynthia. Don't regret it after the divorce. Once we're divorced, you won't be able to enjoy the life of being a wealthy lady in the Cedric family in your later years. I smiled. Don't worry. I won't regret it. After all, I've already spent my life in regret. I've been morally kidnapped for so many years and muddled through almost my entire life. Could there be anything more regrettable than that? Since that day, Cedric hasn't come home. Since Jackson returned to the country, he hasn't come back to see me. His mother. Either. As for Winnie, needless to say, she has already recognized Yvonne as her mother. She's probably having a great time at Yvonne's house right now. I thought of the quarrel I had with Winnie before she ran away from home. Just because Winnie was dating a delinquent boy who liked to ride modified motorcycles. She didn't go to university every day and went drag racing with that little ruffian. I punished her by not allowing her to go out and stopped all her cards. She cried and made a scene. You don't deserve to be my mother at all. You don't understand me at all. Yvonne supports me being with my true love. You're not even 1/10 as good as Yvonne. I was a bit helpless. I wanted to say that I'm your mother. And only a mother will take care of you. Outsiders won't care about you. They'll just say things to please you. But when the words came to my lips, I couldn't say them. I hate you. You don't deserve to be my mother. No wonder Dad doesn't like you. You deserve it. After saying these words, she slammed the door and left. That night, Yvonne took her in and even sent me a text message. Winnie is with me. Don't worry. Sister. I'll take good care of her for you. At that time, I still hated Yvonne and didn't want my daughter to get too close to the mistress. So I kept sending messages to Winnie, hoping she would come back. But after a few months, no matter what I sent to her, she never replied. Now I've let go of it and don't hate Yvonne anymore. And to hell with Cedric. My children might have all inherited Cedric's cold-blooded genes. In the end, they won't be close to me anymore. I've really lived a failed life. I couldn't keep my husband. My children have cut off relations with me. And I've even got an Alzheimer's disease in my old age. I'll probably end up spending the rest of my days in bed, while lamenting the hardships of life. I packed my luggage and planned to move back to my hometown. After packing, I thought about it and put on my glasses. And I wrote word by word on my phone, "Mom is leaving. Let Dad and Devon take good care of you in the future. Remember to wear more coats when it gets cold." I wanted to wait for her reply before leaving. But after waiting for a long time, Winnie didn't send a single message. I sighed. Once a girl grows up, she won't stay at home. I also hesitated for a while on Jackson's chat page. But in the end, I didn't send him a single message. He already hates me to the core. Maybe in his heart, he can't wait for me to die soon and never bother him again. My eyes were sour, but I couldn't shed any tears. I guess I've cried too much before, and my tears have already dried up. When I left, I didn't feel any attachment. I even felt a sense of relief. I called Cedric and asked him to wait for me at the Civil Affairs Bureau. I went to a hotel near the airport and then asked the doorman to take my luggage up. When I took a taxi to the Civil Affairs Bureau, Cedric was with a woman. It seemed that they had been waiting at the door for a while. My expression darkened. He even brought Yvonne with him to humiliate me on the day of the divorce. He really knows how to do it. Yvonne had endured humiliation for more than 10 years and was finally about to become Mrs. Cedric in her 40s. At this moment, her face was full of pride. In her eyes, I was like a loser. At this time, she was wearing a black trench coat and sweetly holding Cedric's arm. Yvonne pretended to be understanding and said gently, "Do you have any plans for the future, sister? You can't find a job at your age now. And you don't have much savings. Why don't you still live in your original house? I'll ask Cedric to move out and live with me. Anyway, having fulfilled my obsession, Winnie and Jackson are both living with me now. And they happen to miss their dad." Hearing these obviously provocative words, Cedric didn't say anything either. I said infuriately, "Don't bother. I've already moved out. You can move into that house with the children. Anyway, whether it's the house or the people, I don't want them anymore." Yvonne felt embarrassed for a moment and could only force a sheepish smile. Then, let out a low sigh. "Sister, if you need anything in the future, just let us know. You and Cedric have been married for so long. We'll definitely help if we can." "No need. The biggest favor you can do for me is to help me get a divorce." After hearing what I said, Cedric clenched his fists. Cedric and I walked into the Civil Affairs Bureau, while Yvonne waited for us in the car. After a long time, he finally spoke. "Isn't it also good to stay as we are without getting a divorce?" I remained indifferent and didn't even look at him. "That's what you think." He rubbed his brows helplessly. "You still act as impulsively as you did when you were young. You're always being petty about everything. I've already given you 2 chances. But you didn't cherish them. Keep that blessing for Yvonne. I don't need it." The current head of the prestigious Cedric family rarely gets rebuked one sentence after another, so his face immediately darkened, and he fell silent. After completing the formalities, he walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, got into the car, and drove away with Yvonne in one smooth motion. I tightly clutched the divorce certificate in my hand, feeling a great sense of relief. It doesn't matter how hard the future days may be. At least after this moment, I'm about to gain my first freedom in 30 years. I slept in a hotel for one night and then took the early flight the next day. Before my mother passed away, she left me the ancestral house in North City. After arriving in North City, I went back to the ancestral house. Looking at the house that had been sealed for a long time and was covered in dust, I couldn't help but sigh. I remembered the last day I left this home. My mother knelt down, kept kowtowing, and wept bitterly. She said that as long as I married Cedric, the Cedric family would pay to save the Cynthia family. Only I could save the Cynthia family. If you don't marry Cedric, you don't deserve to be a member of the Cynthia family. And you don't deserve to be my daughter. Even on the day I married Cedric, she didn't send me her blessings. Instead, she counted the money transferred by the Cedric family and her bank card and couldn't stop smiling. I closed my eyes, trying to recall some happy memories in the ancestral house. But it felt as if these memories were covered with a cloth, and I couldn't remember them no matter how hard I tried. The doctor said that it wouldn't be long before my illness progressed to the moderate stage. I would forget a lot of things. And there would also be obstacles in my actions and speech. Maybe I wouldn't even be able to speak. Actually, I'm not afraid. It would be great to forget all those people and things before I die. And I don't have to remember them in the next life. While my illness wasn't too serious yet, I cleaned the ancestral house thoroughly in the past few days. And it finally looked brand new. My neighbors were a mother and son. They were warm and hospitable. After learning that I had moved in, they often invited me to their home as a guest. We had a great conversation and soon became friends. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, I had lived in North City for half a year. In the first 2 months of these 6 months, I planted a lot of flowers and plants, and was busy fertilizing and watering them every day. In the following months, I couldn't even remember to water the flowers and plants. I would just sit there in a daze after waking up. And sometimes I even forgot to cook. The neighbor noticed that the flowers and plants in my house had all withered. And I had also lost a lot of weight from hunger. She felt very sorry for me. She invited me to her home for a meal. When the food was served, I couldn't even use the chopsticks. In a hurry, I picked up the food with my hands. Cynthia. The neighbor quickly stopped me and stared at me in surprise. Are you sick? Only then did I realize what I was doing. I just felt so ashamed. I was so embarrassed that I just wanted to run away as soon as possible. I suddenly didn't want to be sick anymore. In the later stage of this illness, I might even lose my self-esteem. I have always paid attention to etiquette and adhered to my principles all my life. I can't accept the thought of living until the end and becoming a dementia patient without even a sense of shame. Sorry. It was only when I managed to say these 3 words that I realized I hadn't spoken for a long time. It's okay. Cynthia. I know what illness you have. And we will take care of you. Yes, petting so still my assertion. Cynthia. Sonny will often come to accompany you in the future. Please don't cry. Okay? The boy named Sonny picked up a napkin and wiped my face. I realized that I seemed to be crying. After some time passed, the neighbor's family gave me a little dog to keep me company. I was afraid that I couldn't take care of it in my current state. So I wanted to refuse. Don't worry, Cynthia. I'll come to feed it every day. You just need to be with it. It's a puppy just born from my mother's dog. Let it accompany you in your later years. I opened my mouth speechlessly. Thank you. She smiled and asked me to give the puppy a name. Somehow, a character Chew popped into my mind. I always felt that this character had accompanied me for a long time. But I just couldn't remember why. Cedric. Great. Auntie is no longer alone. I smiled with relief and stroked the boy's head. I was very grateful for everything this mother and son had done for me. Once, when I passed by their house, I heard the neighbor tell her son, Sonny, you must take good care of Auntie, okay? Auntie is sick and alone. She's so lonely on weekdays. Remember to go and accompany her more often. The boy named Sonny nodded vigorously. I really like Auntie. She's so gentle. But why doesn't she have a family? If a person as gentle as her had children, she would definitely be very kind to them. She might have her own difficulties. Let's not ask about other people's family affairs, so as not to cause them unnecessary trouble. After hearing this conversation, my mind went blank. The word family was both familiar and strange to me. I always felt that I had forgotten something. I should have had a family once. But it didn't seem that important. If it were really important, how could I have forgotten it? My illness became more and more serious these days. And I couldn't even walk normally at home. I couldn't accept that I would need others to take care of my daily life in the end. When I was young, I loved beauty the most. Before my family went bankrupt, I used my pocket money to buy a lot of nice clothes and dress myself up. The first time I met Cedric was at a family banquet of the Cynthia family. I was wearing a high-end customized dress and slowly entered the banquet hall, holding up the hem of my dress. Cedric later told me that I was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. In the first few years after I married Cedric, I became a wealthy socialite. He treated me very well, being gentle and considerate. At first, I was deeply immersed in his tenderness and even forgot that we had a business marriage. I fell in love with him uncontrollably. But the good times didn't last long. When I gave birth to my first son, he thought I wasn't pretty anymore. There were stretch marks all over my stomach every time we were intimate at night. Although he never said it, I could see a flash of disgust in his eyes. When I was pregnant with my daughter, he had an affair. He dated a girl younger than me. At that time, I hated him deeply. I quarreled with him. And he sneered. Cynthia, recognize your position. We're just in a business marriage. It was because of this sentence that I suddenly woke up. Yes. Cedric had never loved me all these years. But I was such a proud person. How could I allow myself to share a husband with other women? So I wanted to get a divorce. But every time my mother forced me to stay with the excuse of the Cynthia family. She even took away my ID card, and I didn't even have a chance to run away. I resigned myself to my fate. Since I was born into a wealthy family and never cared about prices when spending money. It was all because I was a daughter of the Cynthia family. Then I had no choice but to be Mrs. Cedric. As a way to repay the upbringing of the Cynthia family. From then on, I no longer had any love for Cedric. For dozens of years, we had been living our own lives without interfering with each other, although we had a son and a daughter. Mrs. Cedric, Cedric's mother, took Jackson back to the main residence of the Cedric family not long after he was born. She didn't want me to interfere in the education of the eldest grandson of the Cedric family. And I could only visit Jackson twice a month. So I also hated Mrs. Cedric extremely. When Jackson was in his senior year of high school, Mrs. Cedric died. I didn't attend Mrs. Cedric's funeral and urgently wanted Cedric to bring the child back to me. But Jackson had been raised by Mrs. Cedric since he was a child and was very close to her. So he thought I was a cold-blooded monster and didn't want to recognize me as his mother. He immediately asked Cedric to arrange for him to go to a university abroad and didn't even come back to see me. Suddenly, my mind lit up, and I actually remembered so many things. I wonder if this is like a flashback before death? I smiled. If I had to live without self-esteem, I might as well just die. I forced myself to stand up and walked unsteadily towards Cedric. Cedric seemed to guess what I was going to do and kept barking. I carried it outside the door and locked it outside. Cedric, thank you for these days. It barked and hit the door. I ignored its barking and walked to the gas stove. After turning on the gas stove, I went back to the dressing table. I hadn't dressed up for a long time. But I couldn't recognize these cosmetics clearly. So I just combed my hair. Then I lay back on the bed and closed my eyes peacefully. I didn't die. Cedric brought the neighbor to save me. In the hospital bed, the boy lay in my arms and cried loudly. Cynthia, don't think so negatively. Sonny will always be with you. Can you please not die for my sake? I gently stroked the boy's hair. Jackson, is that you coming to see me? Mom misses you so much. Since you grew up, Mom hasn't even seen you once. So this is what you look like now. The boy was obviously stunned, but he quickly said firmly. Yes, hadn't just at all. Mom, I'm here to see you. So please don't die. Okay? Mom doesn't want to die either. But Mom doesn't want to have this illness. After getting this illness, I might even lose control of my bowels and bladder. Mom is really afraid of becoming like that. It won't happen. Mom. In my eyes, you will always be the most beautiful. I said softly. Really? I lay in the hospital bed for some time, feeling groggy. It was always the boy and a woman who accompanied me. But I always couldn't remember who they were, until a man I had never seen before came. When he saw me, his eyes turned red. Cynthia, I'm here to take you home. I listened in a daze to the name he called. Who is Cynthia? And who is he? The woman who often accompanied me angrily rebuked. How can you be such an incompetent husband? You're only coming to see her now. Do you even know what illness Cynthia has? The man said guiltily. I'm sorry. I'm late. He sat beside me and spoke softly. Cynthia, do you still remember me? I shook my head. He was a bit disappointed but still held my hands tightly. The children actually miss you. Would you like to come back with me? I shook my head again. No, Although I didn't remember who he was, I instinctively resisted this person. The man stiffened for a moment, then said gently, "Let's go back to Nanchang. There are the best hospitals in Nanchang, which can relieve this symptom. I will also hire the best nurse to take care of you." Hearing what the man said, I was scared and said, "I don't want that. I don't want others to see me. To see me in a state where I can't take care of myself." The man quickly soothed me. Okay. I won't hire one. Will you come home with me first, please?" I said blankly. "Home? Do I have a home?" Tears welled up in his eyes all of a sudden. "You have a home. I am your home." I was transferred to the best hospital in Nanchang. The doctor gave me a comprehensive examination. He sighed and said to the man, "The patient not only has Alzheimer's disease but also a very severe case of major depressive disorder. I'm afraid she won't survive this year. If the patient has the thought that life is worse than death, you family members should consider whether to take the patient's thoughts into account." The man nodded with tears in his eyes and then arranged an ICU ward for me. On the first day of my hospitalization, two strange young people came to visit me. "Mom." The young girl looked at my current state and shed tears. "Mom. I was wrong. Please don't forget me. Okay?" The other young man remained silent, but his expression was also very sorrowful. I racked my brains before I remembered how to speak. "Where's Sonny? I want Sonny." Just as I was speaking, the boy ran in and stood in front of me. "Sonny is here to see you." The woman took Sonny's hand and smiled. "You have to get better soon so that you can continue to play with Sonny." I also held Sonny's other hand. "I will. My child. Sonny." The two young people looked embarrassed. "Mom. We are your children." I looked at their unfamiliar faces and couldn't remember who they were after thinking for a long time. "Who are you?" The young man stood in front of me. His face was pale. "Mom. Don't be angry. Since you can remember a neighbor you just met recently, how could you forget us? We are your children." "Enough." The man who brought me to Nanchang walked into the ward. "Jackson. Winnie, having fulfilled my adsi. You go home first and come to visit your mother tomorrow." The two young people left reluctantly. The man said to the woman and Sonny, "Thank you for coming to Nanchang." "You're welcome." The doctor said that having Sonny around can relieve Cynthia's symptoms. "If there's a need, Sonny can come anytime." The man nodded and took the woman and Sonny out. The man soon came in again, this time alone. "I want Sonny. Where's Sonny?" Every time I spoke, I felt it was very difficult, so I could only utter words one by one. "Sonny still has to go to school and can't accompany you often." There was tenderness in the man's eyes. "I'll accompany you often. Okay? I don't want you. I want Sonny." A trace of sadness welled up in his eyes. He held my hand. "Cynthia. Is this your punishment for me? I've sent Yvonne away. From now on, I'll only be with you. Okay? Don't forget me and the children." I shook off his hand. Although I couldn't remember this person in my mind, 3 words involuntarily came out of my mouth. "I hate you. I hate you." The man left in a state of dismay. Before he left, he took a deep look at me. "Cynthia. I'm sorry." After that, every day, the man would bring those 2 young people to visit me. At first, he sat beside me and showed me some photo albums. This was when Winnie was 3 years old. "Look. You were the one who cleaned up after she wet the bed at that time." The young woman blushed shyly. "Dad. Why are you saying this? And here's your diary. Although Jackson wasn't by your side since he was a child, you used to talk about him every day and write about him in your diary every day. Let me read it to you. Today is Jackson's birthday. I bought a cake. But he doesn't like this flavor. What flavor does Jackson like?" I asked Mrs. Cedric. But she wouldn't tell me. I'll ask Jackson myself the next time I see him. Jackson got a score of 100. He is indeed my son. I went to pick him up after school and planned to take him to eat something delicious. But I was stopped by Mrs. Cedric. Mrs. Cedric said that I couldn't see Jackson without her permission. I watched as she took Jackson away. and my heart was filled with indescribable sadness. Jackson is in junior high school. And Winnie has just started primary school. In the future, Jackson must take good care of Winnie. In case I'm not around and some bad people deceive Winnie, Jackson must drive them all away. But how can I make the two of them closer? It seems that I still need to ask Mrs. Cedric to give Jackson back to me. How can Mrs. Cedric be so heartless? Jackson is clearly my son. Why won't she let him come back to me? I'm sorry, Jackson. It's Mom who didn't accompany you. Mrs. Cedric is dead. Can Jackson come back to me now? Jackson doesn't want me anymore. The man's voice became more and more choked up. And finally, he couldn't speak anymore. The young boy knelt beside me, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't consider your feelings before. I just thought why you could be so cold-blooded. You didn't even want to come and see Grandma when she passed away. Now I understand your difficulties. Please get better soon. Okay? You can scold me or hit me as you like then. Please don't forget me. I'm begging you. Mom. The girl also kept wiping away her tears. Their eyes were all swollen from crying these days. Mom. I've broken up with that man. After you left, I found out that that man was Yvonne's little nephew. Yvonne arranged for him to deliberately seduce me. They were all after the property of the Cedric family. I was unlucky to meet the wrong person at the beginning. Now I know who really treats me well. Mom, having fulfilled my obsession. I know I was wrong. I will take good care of you. Just like you took care of me when I was a child. I just thought their chattering voices were very noisy. I frowned and just ignored them. Want to sleep, the man with gray hair said in a trembling voice. Let's go home. Mom wants to sleep today. So we won't disturb her. The man took them away. The world became quiet again. I slowly fell asleep. In my dream, I seemed to have returned to my youth. I just felt that my body was extremely light. I had just stolen a lot of sleeping pills from the pharmacy and swallowed them. And it seemed to have taken effect. I saw my lover when we were young. But I couldn't remember his name no matter how hard I tried. He said at the wedding, Cynthia, I only love you. But why did he break his promise in the end? In a flash of time, I saw him looking at my belly with a hint of sarcasm. We're just a business marriage. You didn't really believe it. Did you? Is that so? It turned out that I was the only one who took it seriously. The noise came again in my ears. Hurry up and arrange the gastric lavage operation. Hurry up. It's already being prepared. It's so noisy. I really don't want to hear their voices. I frowned and wanted to shout that I didn't want them to arrange the operation for me. But I couldn't open my mouth. Just then, went out sorry. A blurred voice came to my ears. Cynthia. Do you want to sleep? If you want to, you can sleep. I won't stop you. I moved my fingers. I felt my head being gently stroked. Cynthia. I'm sorry for you in this life. Forget me. Forget me completely. If there's an afterlife, you won't remember me either. I won't look for you in the next life and won't bother you anymore. Go to sleep. Cynthia. I'll talk to the children. It's us who are sorry for you. I've only just seen clearly what's in my heart. And it's really too late. Good night. My wife. I've never called you that in my whole life. At the end, let me call you that once. Good night. I fell into a deep sleep. It is said that after a person dies, for 7 days, the soul will wander in the human world. I looked at my own body in a daze. It seemed that I was dead. Who am I? Why did I die? And where am I going? I walked aimlessly on the street. And no living person could see my existence. Occasionally, I met other souls. And they all seemed to have memories. Hey, look how sad your daughter is crying. She really hates to part with you. What's the use of hating to part? I'm already old. In my 70s or 80s. I can be considered to have died a natural death. But my daughter is a scientist and doesn't believe in metaphysics at all. I'm afraid she won't burn paper for me in the future. And I'll starve to death in the underworld. How did you die? You look only in your 30s. I was killed by my husband. But he won't have a good time either. My soul is very strong. I'll go and claim his life at night. These souls were chattering and chatting idly. I don't know who noticed me. There's a new arrival in our area. A new arrival? How did you die? I said honestly. I don't remember. Then what about your family? Why don't you go and see your family? I said again. I don't remember having any family members. Eh. Did you lose your memory before you died? That won't do. You have to see your child before your soul disappears. Or you'll have regrets, said a soul, gesturing for everyone to gather together. Come on. Let's all help this lady find her child. Where are we supposed to look for them? One soul said happily. Hey. I know her. She was in the news. Is she a big shot? Yeah. She's Mrs. Cedric of the Cedric family in South City. I remember her very clearly because she's really beautiful. Even comparable to celebrities. Then what are we waiting for? You should go and see your husband and children right away. I didn't really feel like going to see them. But since everyone said I shouldn't have any regrets before my soul disappeared, I decided to go and take a look. Thank you all. I'm leaving now. The souls all waved at me warmly. Look. It's different when a wealthy lady dies. Maybe her family will even burn real RMB for her. Why do you think she lost her memory? And I didn't hear that the wife of the Cedric family died before I died either. Who knows? Maybe she just died accidentally. Oh, never mind. My soul drifted to the Cedric family following the guidance. However, it was not what I had imagined. The Cedric family seemed to lack any warmth or humanity. Is this really my home? I vaguely felt that I should have liked liveliness when I was alive. Father. A magnetic voice caught my attention. A young man entered the door. He had a handsome face with sharp features and was wearing a black suit. Despite his peerless appearance, he looked rather gloomy at the moment. For some reason, my heart ached for a moment when this young man came in. It's time to go to the funeral, Father. I followed his gaze and looked at the man with gray hair. The man was wiping an album and a diary. I really feel sorry for your mother in my life. He sighed. It was me who took a fancy to her in the first place. At the Cynthia family banquet that year, she was so fair and beautiful that I couldn't forget her at the first sight. But later, I tried so hard to marry her. Yet I never cherished her. I knew very well that what she cherished most later was her children. But I never thought about reconciling the relationship between you. I'm really sorry for her in this life. The young man smiled bitterly and said, she probably won't want me to be her son in the next life either. There's no worse child than me. Father. For the rest of our lives, we have to atone for our sins against Mom. Yes. She loved liveliness when she was young. But I made her stay alone in this empty room for so many years. If I go down to accompany her, will she not recognize me? She won't recognize any of us. She hates us. Is that so? Yes. However, I found a piece of paper stuck in the album. When I opened it, it was a suicide note. Cynthia. After attending your funeral, I plan to follow you. I don't have any other intentions. I don't want to bother you in the underworld. I just feel that I'm ashamed of you. Since you're already dead, what face do I have to live in this world? Death is actually a kind of liberation for me. The children have grown up now. I passed on the position of the head of the family to Jackson. Jackson and Winnie have been crying these days. I don't know how to comfort them. They are young and are now living in regret. I'm afraid they won't be able to forgive themselves in this life. Cynthia. Actually, it was me who was attracted to you at first. But why didn't I cherish you later? I still think I was bewitched. You watched me change one lover after another. And you gradually lost your haughty temper from being an overbearing young lady at the beginning and became the gentle Mrs. Cedric. It was me who erased your personality. Our Cedric family is sorry for you. Our Cedric family is sorry for you. Cynthia. It doesn't matter if you don't recognize me in the underworld. As long as I recognize you. It is said that a person's soul will not disperse for 7 days after death. I wonder if I will see you again at that time? Of course. I won't acknowledge you. I don't want to spoil your mood. I will accompany you until the day when our souls disperse together.